So John already kindly introduced me. My name is Pieter Cools. I'm based here in Ghent, and I'm a senior research engineer at the AMCOR organization, focusing primarily on platform technology developments. And I would say the use of recycling and recycling technologies is very much in scope for our company. For those of you that don't know AMCOR, we are the market leader in flexible packaging solutions globally. And John mentioned it, it really goes from consumer goods such as snacks, confectionery, coffee, pet food, home and personal care, as well as medical packaging, pharma packaging, but also technical industrial films used for solar panels, battery packs, etc. So it's really a whole range that we serve. Overall, we've been founded about 140 years ago in Australia, but in the meantime, we have about 250 sites, a little over 70 here in Europe. A little bit more than 50,000 people working for the organization. Close to 800 of those are working in the R&D organization, so we're really a strong technology-driven company. We do about 14 billion in annual sales. 9 of that is in the flexible space, so we also have a bit of rigids and thermoforming business, primarily in North America. And really, it's a global business, but we always try to implement the local mindset because the needs and requirements in Europe, for example, are completely different than what is required in Asia Pacific. Good. All right. First of all, why is flexible packaging relevant? Because in the end, you hear a lot of things going on. But if you look at the numbers, and this is an example that we took for a 200 ml juice, fruit juice filling, you will see compared to most of the other ones, and I will just see this, all right, that if you look at the amount of fossil fuel that you need to produce it, the amount of greenhouse gases, water consumption, you really are way more efficient when you compare it to your liquid beverage cartons, to your aluminum cans, or to your glass bottles. And if you go down that list, you will see sometimes numbers that go 3 times, 5 times, or even almost 100 times worse when it comes to water consumption. Also, if you think about shipping out these packages from AMCOR to their customers, with flexible packaging, we can do about double the amount compared to liquid beverage cartons, or even almost 50 times as much when it comes to glass bottles. So it's really bringing a lot of advantages. Still, when you look at plastics in the media, it's mainly perceived negatively. And it shows very well why here, because we see that although it's performing very well technically, this end of life is really a challenge when it comes to this. And then when you irresponsibly deal with such materials after using them, they end up in landfilling, which then tends to leak into the environment. And as plastics don't break down very easily, you tend to have accumulation of this in the environment. Good, and this summarizes it really high level. If we look at it in a circular way, if we go from raw materials up to the consumers, everything is perfect. It's really the most efficient way that you can package your goods. It's really that end-of-life complexity that we needed to tackle, and actually where MultiCycle was offering a really good opportunity to see if we could bridge that gap between end-of-life consumption and then going to the next generation raw material. All right. It's a bit of a... Good, and even though as AMCOR we could say, okay, why would we invest in this? Why would we spend time in this? But if we look at our society, we see that, struggling a bit, we see that sustainability is really a growing concern. And even in this COVID-driven time, when that was the main topic, sustainability was still the #2 growing concern. And it's not in one country. We see that it's there in all the major countries, along with global warming and plastic pollution. So 50% in the UK thinks that plastic pollution is the most pressing environmental issue. 80% of German consumers believe that we are using too much plastic. And 2/3 of the French consumers think that grocery retailers are using too much plastics to sell fresh goods. They also see, or they also think that companies are underperforming and are not taking the responsibility. The reality is not always there, but that is the perception that we need to deal with. So 1 in 2 things that manufacturers should act more actively on waste ownership. 2/3 think that brands and retailers are not doing enough to introduce more environmentally friendly forms. And almost 90% thinks it's the brand owner's task to deal with this. So it's not the consumer that is using it, that is disposing of it, but it's really the brands that are putting the material on the market are being held accountable. All right, and this has translated in quite a lot of actions from the European Union, European Commission. By 2030, 100% of all packaging that is put onto the market needs to be designed to be recyclable or reusable, which is a massive changeover for the industry. It's the biggest one that we've seen since the introduction, actually, of plastics in the packaging world. Revised requirements for placing packaging on the market based on recyclability. So it's not anymore about winning in the market. It's about having access to the market. If you're not going along and tackling design for recycling, you will not get access to the market anymore. And they are looking at it now. In the past, they were always tackling packaging based on weight. So what did brand owners do? They down-gauge, they make the packaging more thinner while keeping it performant. How do they do this? By combining different polymers. Today, regulations is really shifting from weight to number of packaging, which is a whole other, and that R&D focus today. And they also smart design, and there are research that support projects like MultiCycle, and it's where we, as a company, can work together in the value chain to make a systemic difference. But it's not only the European Union. It's also, if you look at the different countries, they typically want to be even more ambitious than what Europe is setting here. I've taken the example of the UK Plastic Pact, but we see the same in the Netherlands, we see the same in Chile, we see the same now happening in California. They take these same requirements, 2025 instead of 2030, but also, and this is one that we see popping up now more and more, 30% on average recycled content across all plastic packaging. This is a huge challenge because in the last 40 years, we've been designing polymers to be highly performant, and now they want to introduce this highly variable mix of material into these packaging solutions, expecting that they will same way. And also, of course, elimination of single-use packaging, problematic products like straws, and this is based on what they find on the beaches, etc. That's why today, if you go to a fast food chain, your straw will be made of cardboard and not anymore of plastics. Even though, in the reality, it's not 100% paper, but that's maybe a different discussion. Good, and you could say, okay, if plastics and plastic packaging is giving all these problems, why not get rid of it altogether? Why not just sell the product as such? You can go into the shop with your glass jar, they can fill it for you, you take it home. Actually, if you look at some of the studies that were done by the United Nations, which were actually one of the drivers to initiate a lot of action plans around sustainability, circular economy, and packaging, we see that if you under-design your packaging, your excess product waste is going up massively. And if you think back on that slide a few pages ago, we said 3% of the overall pack-to-weight ratio is your flexible packaging. That means 97% is actually your packaged good. And to waste on that is having a much more pronounced impact on the environment than if you over-design your packaging, maybe add too much plastics in there just to be on the safe side. Still, we really want to go to that optimal packaging design. And that's where the sweet spot is. Is it easy to find? No, but it's something that we will try to tackle as an organization. But it shows also that packaging has a role to play in society. That's why after the United Nations came out with their action plans, 15, 17 points, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation was set up. And this organization, global organization, was really focused, okay, how can we tackle these issues? And they've brought together multiple parties from different parts in the value chain and really see, can we make a global commitment to tackle this issue? And AMCOR was actually the first converter globally that participated in this initiative, and we came up in 2018, so already 4 years ago, with the 2025 pledge. The pledge that we set is made of 3 pillars. The first one, develop all our packaging to be recyclable or reusable by 2025. Massive overhaul. When we started, was maybe 10% of our packaging portfolio that fall in this category. Today, we are already over 80% that is designed to be recycled. Still, that last 20% 100% will be a challenge, because the more technically demanding your packaging is, the more challenging it becomes to find a solution that fits the recyclability bill. Second one, significantly increase our use of recycled material in our packaging, where applicable. And this is the big challenge for us, because although we want to introduce it where we can, the technical performance of much of the recyclates we find on the market today are simply not good enough. And if you look at the overall pool of recycled material, I would say it's maybe 5–10% that we would deem today suitable to be put back in flexible packaging solutions. So it's not about us not willing, it's also about not having the right resources to do so. And that's why projects like MultiCycle are so important. How can we tackle that raw material quality and increase the portfolio of recycled material content that we can offer? Because it's an opportunity as well. If we are able to tackle this, then you gain an advantage compared to your competitors, because you are able to offer something somebody else can't. Finally, working together with others in the value chain to drive sorting, recycling, and collection. MultiCycle is a great example of this, because we have partners from the raw material business. We have recyclers in here. We have converters in here. And it's really about working together towards one direction, because the last thing that we want to do is diversify, split, everybody goes into its own direction, and you will have 15 solutions of which none really work. So for us to work there together, it's hugely important. And we do it today. The Alliance to End Plastic Waste, C-Flex, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, and many other local initiatives as well. And I've took out here the C-Flex recommendations, because I think it's important to understand as a base what we are moving towards as an industry. So end of the 2010s, 2018, 2019, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation ran a project called Project Barrier, which was really looking what is the composition of the flexible packaging waste and what do we need to do to make it more suitable for recycling. And they came up with this design for recycling guidelines, which is for AMCOR as a converter, a direct change that we can do as our role in the value chain. And they came up with 3 different material streams. Aluminum, minimum 80% aluminum content. You can think about your beverage cans, you can think about certain coffee capsules, you can think about caps that are being used for wine. Paper stream, minimum paper content 80%. Or polyolefins, PP and PE, with 90% being that material, a density less than 1 gram per cubic centimeter, which means that you can sort it out more efficiently. Avoid problematic materials such as PET, PVC, PVDC, combination with fibers or foil, really to also promote the way that you can recycle it, make it more easy, recover more material. In the end, other polymers to be avoided less than 5%. Things that have a functionality. EVOH is used a lot today to add barrier. Actually, we're currently facing a raw material crisis in that field because the demand is so high. The same for polyamide. It's used a lot to strengthen up your material. So to phase out some of these materials, more easy than to phase out some of the others. And that's where MultiCycle actually can have an added value, where the Creasolve technology can help you to separate some of these more problematic materials from the ones that you actually want to reuse in the next generation. That's one too much. Let me get back to this end-of-life complexity. So, as I mentioned in the beginning, we are serving a huge market. It's going from fresh and dairy to beverages to snacks and confectionery to high technical applications, which means that in the end, different applications means different requirements. You can imagine if you have your pouch where you have a tea bag in, that's very different requirements than when you have a 5-kilogram bag of dry dog food that you need to pack. So because of those different packaging requirements, you usually have, you usually also have a very different packaging composition. Not only is it extremely complex as such, but we also see when you look across Europe, across the globe, and across seasons, that there's a massive variability there. You all know that in summer, you will consume much more ice cream than when you do around Christmas, where you will find a lot more toy packaging in your flexible packaging waste. And that's the reality, and that changes over time, which means that as a recycler, a bit like, and it's a weird comparison maybe, but like a good wine builder, it's about combining different grapes at different ratios to get a consistent quality across the years. And this is challenging. And as more and more products are moving into flexible packaging because of that raw material efficiency, it's getting more and more complex. So it's really not making the life of recyclers easy. Furthermore, when we look at sorting this material out, so when you collect it, if you do household curbside collection, you can get a good portion of that. Some of it will go into residual waste. There's always losses that you need to deal with, but you can collect a significant portion. When you start sorting out that material, that's when you start losing a lot of efficiencies. That's where also Iris as a partner has been working on. How can we improve that sorting efficiency through artificial intelligence, through really machine learning, and see if we can identify packaging better. But today, if you look at a typical recycling facility, first stage, 70% efficient, 30% losses. And then of that 70%, they will go through an additional 1 or 2 sorting stages until they have a purity of 95%, 98 maybe. But to get to a purity of 98, you are probably losing 60% of the overall collection. And that's what's really a pity, because you have a lot of raw materials that you need to tackle, that you can do something with it to, in the end up in landfilling or incineration. Or even what you collect as monomaterial polyethylene, polypropylene, or mixed polyolefins, they tend to be contaminated with inks, adhesives, rest polymers. Inks and adhesives, polyurethanes, nitrocellulose, acrylates, styrene in there. So really more exotic types of chemistries, which all will negatively interfere with your extrusion process. And we see that what comes out, even if it's 95% pure or 98% pure, usually is only suitable for low-end applications. And what do I mean with low-end applications? Things like garden benches, fillings for construction work, maybe some injection molded parts that are used in applications where strength is not always necessarily a requirement. Low-end applications lead already to a market saturation. If we look today, 70% of that market is filled with this type of application. So even if you would collect and sort twice as many materials, probably you will not be able to offset them. This means also that the value of this raw material is quite low. And as such, that brings us to the big paradigm. Waste is seen as an economical burden, a societal burden, meaning it's not sustainable. Yeah. And there comes the question, can advanced recycling technologies, such as the Creosoul process, break this paradigm? Can we switch this around from being a waste, a burden, to something that actually has value, that people want to use in their products because of economical benefits, marketing benefits, raw material synergies? Today, we are facing one raw material crisis after the other. If we have additional streams to tackle, that would actually help us. Can we take this complex input and generate well-defined output streams? And this is something we will get back to later on today. Are we able to reduce the amount of sorting steps and reduce the amount of losses there, which not only increases the yield of what you can recover, but also economically benefits you? Because actually, this collection and sorting, it's where no money is to be made today. It means we can tap into these additional material streams, today only suitable for incineration. So you actually expand the pool of what you can tackle. And the technologies can be compatible with packaging independent of how you manufacture it, because different companies have different strategies to serve the same application. That's how the market works. So even if you use extrusion coating, co-extruded films, if you work through lamination with solvent-free, solvent-based, water-based adhesives, if you print on the surface, or if you print reverse, meaning that it's sandwiched in between 2 plastic layers. If you have a technology that is able to deal with that, independent of how you produce it, it means your efficiencies really go up a lot. We're also looking for a technology that's more sustainable compared to incineration, because there are technologies out there today like gasification, where they say, okay, you don't need to sort, you just put it in, you get a syngas, and this can go back to the petrochemical industry. Right, in theory that works, but in reality we see that if you look at LCA, the life cycle performance of this, probably you will be better off just burning it and using that energy than actually going through all the hoops of going through this high energy intensive process. Finally, can we make something that's suitable for flexible packaging? Because for us, as a flexible packaging converter, that's what really matters. Can we actually implement this and deal with the second pillar of the AMCOR pledge? Because it adds value for us, and it really helps us to close the circle for our products. We are very happy to create material that helps other applications, but in the end, if we can import it back into our own company, that's really where the beauty would lie. So that's high level where I see the challenges and also the opportunities that MultiCycle as a technology could have brought and why we stepped into this project about 3.5 years ago.